Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and kudos to you, Mr. Berry, for the double clutching getting out of groundhog. We used to call it granny, but you're probably more politically correct. My first question is to Mr. Gillen, and that is, it's been referred to before that we need to win the race to 5G. What constitutes a win? Is that people covered, businesses covered, geographic area covered? What constitutes a win to 5G?
For us, it is that next generation of innovation and opportunity happened here first. So it is a matter of having enough scale that we have enough entrepreneurs and innovators to build off that platform. And so absolutely, it starts with a number of people covered in a timely manner.
Okay, so that, and by the way, that's the definition I would expect. The number of people covered in one block in New York City is far more than the county I live in. And my county is bigger than most of the states, not most of, a fair number of states around this table. So the question is it how do we get 5G into rural America? I mean, how do we get it there? The senator from Nebraska talked about, you know, precision farming, but it's more than that. So how do we get it there? Let me put it this way. I'll be more specific. Will you commit to a pilot program for Montana on 5G?
I'm happy to work with your office on what something that looks like. I think for us, 5G starts with the densest area. So it is places like Missoula, it is town squares, and then it goes from there. Just like 4G, and we continue to work on getting 4G more and more in Montana. The job is not done by far.
Okay, so and I'm not picking on Verizon, but I happen to have one of your phones in my pocket, okay? Have you seen the map on the advertisement that Verizon puts up? And by the way, I think all of them are this way. I'm picking on you because I've got this. Have you seen that or advertisement?
Yes, sir.
Do you agree with that map?
I've only had the chance to be in Missoula, which had great coverage, but I've not been in the rest of it.
Well, let me tell you something. Missoula and Big Sandy is a hell of a lot different. I'll just tell you that. And it's a 75-mile drive for me to Great Falls from my farm, and I bet I don't have coverage 25 miles of that. And yet that map's all red. You want to talk about that?
Yes, sir, and I do appreciate the question. And this is something that that National League of Cities and governments across the country are facing, is that there's a real misunderstanding as to 5G, especially when they ask states to preempt local governments with respect to deployment. So the industry comes in and says, we will have 5G in your communities and throughout the state, and it's the next generation broadband, and we absolutely need it. And really, what they're doing is densification of 4G networks in very dense local, city areas for the most part. Just to give you an example, the state of Nebraska is currently debating a preemption small cell deployment bill, the same as Florida passed last year. And the cities, led by the city of Lincoln, talked about lowering their rates for attachment to city-owned poles, to city and county-owned poles. They were willing to reduce the rate from the market rate of about $2,000 per pole to $95 per pole if the industry would agree to build out the entire state over a reasonable period of time with 5G service.
That isn't the problem. The problem is you look at these bars on this phone, when I go home, there are none.
Right.
There are no bars on this phone. So we're not even close to talking about 4G or 3G or any G where I live. We're not even close. I might be able to get a text message, but unless I'm standing in the right corner of my house with my mouth held in the right direction, this phone does not work, okay? And it's that way. I live in one of the more populated areas of the state. Go ahead.
Well, Senator, get back to the eligibility map, which, and you raise a really important point. It says it's covered.
Yes.
And it says a lot of places are covered.
Yes.
What the FCC did was decide.
So how do we fix that? The FCC is wrong. They screwed up. We're getting screwed because they screwed up. So how do we fix it?
Well, you've got to get better data. And what they decided was to collect data that was not what I would call consumer use data.
Who'd they collect it from? Who did they collect it from?
They requested parameters for the data and information from all the carriers. And the carriers gave the FCC exactly what they requested. We suggested that that was the wrong conclusion. What they chose was the recommendation from the two largest carriers on how to measure coverage. And I'll tell you that in the last 8 years, the FCC has time and time again under several administrations said we had 98% coverage throughout the entire United States.
You made the statement in your opening statement, garbage in, garbage out. There's got to be a way to get the FCC's attention on this, Mr. Chairman, on this issue. It's come up in almost every one of these questions. We are not going to solve the problems of wireless, broadband, anything in rural America if we don't have good information. And I would just say, I've got 400 questions to ask you guys. I'm not going to be able to do it, so we'll put them in writing, and you'll have a lot of work to do. But the bottom line is that if we don't get this right, and if we
Actually,
don't
you're
do it,
limited to 300 questions.
300, okay. I'll pare back to 299 with due respect. But the truth is, I know there's plenty of folks out there that say things like, why do these guys even live in rural America? They knew they didn't have the coverage when they moved there. I've got to tell you, I looked at my grandfather's diary from 1915, and you're right. He said, you know, damn it, there's no cell coverage out here. We got to do better, folks. It's not working. Thank you.